Hey, quick thing before we start. If you're a project manager who's been sitting in meetings lately, nodding along and quietly wondering whether or not AI is going to make you and your job completely obsolete, John Tanner and I have built a course just for you. It's called AI Ready for PMs. It's one live day, it's IC Agile certified, and you're going to walk out with more than just theory. During the class, you're going to get hands-on experience using AI to directly do your job, and you're also going to build a plan to increase your skills and fluency once the class is over. I'm teaching it with John Tanner, who, in addition to being a White House alum, has some serious AI chops, and I am dragging in 30 years of experience in project management. Just follow the link in the show notes or head over to beforeaiready.com. That's beforeaiready.com. And that's it. On to the interview.
If you learn to work the old way, but the new way is what you need, my job's to make that switch from old to new. Suck less for you than it did for me. Here on Drunken PM Radio. Whoa! Here on Drunken PM Radio. Whoa!
Welcome to the Reluctant Agilist. I'm Dave Pryor. Today, Braden Cundiff is back. Braden, say hi to everybody.
Hey everyone, how are you doing?
And it's early in the morning for both of us. I don't know, Braden, how much of a morning person you are, but this is not my shining hour. So I'm going to be leaning on you very heavily during this interview. But thank you for doing it.
Espressos in, so
all right.
Should be good.
All right. Cool. So we're going to talk all about RAGs and CAGs. I had heard of RAGs before, but never CAGs until I read Braden's blog post. So we're going to get into that. But first, Braden, would you mind telling these fine people who you are and what you do? Because you've had a couple career complete flips since the last time we talked.
Yeah, I think last time we talked, I was doing Agile coaching and also working with just got done working at McGraw-Hill. So yep, now I'm at BloomFilter.ai. I'm a customer success manager. So what I do there is really help customers to get the most value out of our tools. And so that might be involved things like helping them to leverage our AI tool with prompts and making sure that they leverage how to use those and how to use those different prompting methods. And then also looking at how they're leveraging their different SDLC processes. So we'll go in and look at, hey, here's where you're doing well, here's where you could improve. And then what we've been doing lately is also looking at how human developers and agents are working together and where some of those coordination pieces are and how to get the most value out of your AI tools, as well as see, are you using all of your AI capacity that you're already paying for? So we're really transitioning into being able to help folks understand, are you really adopting these AI tools? And then also, how are you using them? So are you using them to really move your code forward, or are you actually creating more rework by leveraging these agents? So it's a really cool opportunity to work with customers on, getting them to understand how they're using AI, because they're getting a mandate. Like probably all big companies are, right?
Use more
AI, right? Like, hey, use AI, and are they actually using it in a way that's beneficial, or are they creating more rework? So we're really kind of in that AI contextual layer, helping folks know, are you being successful, or are you just are you wasting tokens?
Spinning your wheels. Okay, what does BloomFilter do for the people that aren't familiar with it?
So BloomFilter is a process intelligence tool. And what we do is we act as the contextual layer on top of AI. So we tell you really what your AI tools are doing in coordination with your SDLC practices. So we look at looking at your current software development lifecycle practices. What are you doing well? Where can you improve? And then we layer on top of that our AI agent to say, okay, based on that, what could you do better going forward, either leveraging your own AI tools or also leveraging our AI tools to tell you more about your SDLC. So a perfect example coming from our Agilist world, it's like a Scrum Master in the past. Instead of just going through and looking at maybe a chart, I can type in a slash prompt into our AI tool and say, hey, give me an idea of what we should talk about during this retrospective, or where can we improve on this last sprint? And it's like basically a Scrum Master assistant. It's not replacing a Scrum Master role, but it's giving you some of those feedbacks and talk tracks, so that when you go into those retrospectives or sprint retros or planning sessions, you're really looking at the data and the process versus just, hey, John didn't pull his weight this week, right? Let's point fingers at him, right? It's like, oh, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but let's look at the process and see what that tells us, and then have a discussion about that.
Okay. So I'm going to now take us in a slightly different direction than the one we're prepared for because of everything that you just said. One of the struggles that I've had with AI in general, and this will lead us to the RAG and CAG conversation, is when I first became aware of it. I was like, okay, that's cool. It'll help you like learn some more stuff or find some more stuff. But for me, as somebody who considers himself a project manager, right? The real value isn't there until I have like my own C3PO, my own thing that can look at everything that's happened, the historical history of like how projects and perform, what's happened with retention and financial spend and all that other stuff, and say, this thing is probably going to go sideways in 2 weeks because of these 4 things, because it has all the contextual data to support that. And when I see people using AI now, like what you just described, if I go into ChatGPT and say, hey, my team failed a sprint, what should I ask about in a retro? It's just swinging wildly at a pinata it can't even find because it doesn't have the ability to see inside my company. And there's obviously a lot of security concerns there. Like I don't want to let just freewheeling tools that are going to be learning off my back inside the company's firewall. But how do I get the depth that I need to be able to see what's actually happening? And that's what you guys are basically doing then.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, we look at how your processes are working for your particular companies, right? Every company is going to be a little bit different. So just saying, tapping into, like you said, ChatGPT and saying, all right, we didn't do well this sprint. What should I do better? It's going to be like, well, you should have planned better. Like, okay, that's great. Like yeah, sure. Thanks.
Super
I guess I'll
helpful,
plan
Mr.
better.
Obvious.
Yeah. So what we do is we look at it and say, okay, what are the types of tasks that you're working on that were getting blocked consistently through the sprint? And then looking forward, maybe you need to either pause on those or go talk to that team that you're dependent on. So we're starting to kind of look at those patterns across, those different sprints and say, hey, here's a pattern that we consistently see that's happening. And you can even look at like the individual level, right? Like, hey, it looks like this person keeps getting hit with injected work. Maybe we need to make sure that they aren't disturbed, this sprint and see if we can improve. And that's that contextual layer that is going to become really, really valuable versus just the, spray and pray approach, right? Of just, hey, how you're gonna get better. So yeah, that's really lit.
It would be able to see, because this one particular thing I see happen fairly frequently. Companies that, whether they're claiming to do safe or not, they're trying to do PI planning. And they plan a PI and the teams feel obligated to say yes to whatever they're asked for, even though they don't have time to look at it. They don't start the work until 3 or 4 weeks into the PI because they're still finishing the work from the last PI. This system would be able to see that and maybe call out a flag on it, where I would see it, but I might not see it until later. Like the tool might find that faster. So as a project manager or somebody who's responsible for team delivery, this would give me earlier warning of the tsunami that's coming.
Yep. And it shifts it to a little bit to just say, okay, well, Dave's been warning me about this for the last 5 PI plannings. I'll take that into consideration. Then they push forward anyway. You can also shift it and say, hey, I'm telling you, and our AI tool is also telling you this, like maybe this is something you need to pay attention to. So it kind of gives you a little bit more, it gives you more data, right? Of here's what's happened. Are you going to expect the same thing to happen? Or are you going to expect something to change? If you want something to change, then, this is what we need to leverage. So it just gives you a little bit of that extra kind of ammo in the back to say, I'm telling you what I've seen from all the data. It's now being supported by, what our large language models are also saying. And then it does help you to plan a little bit, right? To say, all right, what have the teams actually been focused on? Maybe if you want this to get done, then you're going to have to make sure that those teams aren't focused on X and are focused on Y. And it'll give you a good sense of, of where you can make some of those changes. And then the product team still has to make the choice of what are we going to trade off, right? So that's where it does help you give an idea of, let's look at, we have a risk adherence module where we look at, hey, here's what's been happening. These epics are at risk. These initiatives are at risk. And here's what you need to do in order to change it, right? Like, hey, looks like we haven't done a single task for this epic, and we haven't done any stories for this initiative, right? No epics for those initiatives, and you still have us launching on this date. We need to reset expectation. Yeah, and then it's not we call them the watermelon metrics. Which I don't know if folks right.
You brought it up. You got to lay it down now.
Green on the outside, red on the inside, right? So it all looks green on the outside.
Full of seeds.
Yeah, full of seeds and red, and then when you finally open it up, you're like, hey, what happened here? How did we get here? So we try and look at that kind of inside of it, your X-ray view, we need to make some changes now and be predictive rather than reactive. And that's what you get with a lot of reporting is reactive.
So I want to stretch this a little bit this will be the last thing before we get into the RAG and the CAG thing. So let's say that I have a team that is missed the delivery by a certain number of points in the last 3 sprints. And Pete on my team has been overutilized for the last 3 sprints. He's reporting like all these extra hours. And on our Nico board, he's had frowny faces the last 3 Tuesdays. The system can say, well, the last time that happened, you released a patch that was full of security holes. And to me, it's almost like I got the chance to go to sort of the MLB stuff that was happening in the Mets stadium once with a guy who worked at MLB. And he said they had cameras that could actually track muscle twitch. So from a betting perspective, if you could see the muscles in some guy's leg while looks like he's about to steal, and you have all the data that tells you when that muscle flexes this way, he goes, then that would be amazing, like for what that could do for people's predictive ability. And that is maybe extreme and far off in the future, but from a company Intel perspective, that's sort of where this is headed.
Yep. Yeah, it's giving you those insights that you wouldn't necessarily be able to have on your own, right? And it's looking at that and saying, here's where your risks are, right? And here's where you need to pay more attention. And the biggest thing for us, is also looking, not the biggest thing, one of the biggest things is looking at the rework process loops, right? So let's use your example, right? Like, John had, a couple bad sprints in a row. And he's telling you that, hey, I'm overworked. I'm saying, okay, well, we just need to get it across the line. We can then look back and say, okay, how much of that work moved from QA deployed back into in progress? And then we can track the costs of what that actually took on the team, because every time we have a rework loop, you're creating some level of costs, right? Some of that's going to be expected. You're going to have bugs, but you can then look at that and say, okay, based on our, last sprint's capacity, it looks like we almost hit it, or maybe we over delivered. But how much of that work in that next sprint then was rework? Because every time you have that rework loop, right, your costs are, at least doubling, if not more. So that's really where we look at it. And then you can take that up to your team and say, slow down to speed up, to not use all the adjectives in one podcast here. But that's one of the things you can look at, right? To say, hey, we see the rework, it's costing me this amount of money. And when you can actually put the dollars to the rework, then it really gets people's attention to be like, well, I don't want to spend an extra $10,000 for that feature. Okay, well, then this is the process you need to adhere to. And our LLM tools can then give you that insights of, hey, you're probably going to have a rework because you saw those same tendencies these past 2 sprints. It's going to cost you more, rather than saying, you know what, let's take the human element into consideration, put in a little bit less work, and then that work's not going to come back through the rework loop. So looking at those rework loops to then predictively analyze what you need to do going forward, that's where we can really, that's where we really start to create value and consistency. And that's what people want, right? You just want to know consistently, how much can we deliver, and are we delivering, what we said we're going to deliver with less defects as possible.
Yeah. So it's almost like, it's traumatic, but you've got like your Minority Report precogs built into the system, throwing down the red ball saying, it's going sideways tomorrow at 2, better go intervene.
Yep. Yeah. And that's where we get even better to say, you'll actually get like a Teams message or a Slack message, right? Or an email that just says, so instead of you really having to even go in and look at that data yourself, the Flora model that's our AI agent sits on top will actually look at that data and then send you a risk ping, right? To be like, hey, I've noticed 10 items have skipped testing this sprint. You should go look into that, right? So I don't have to go in and check it all the time. I don't have to look at every sprint. You should be, if you're, but an executive probably can't go in to do that. But I can get a ping on my, whatever messaging app you use, and it says, hey, this team is, consistent in the last 2 sprints, had 20% more rework, and they've skipped their workflow steps, an extra 20%. You should go look at that before it gets kind of, out of hand. And then that triggers you to, to go in and make action. So that's where you really get ahead of it, is you don't have to go look at it every time. You just get that ping in your, mailbox and says, oh, hey, I should go, talk to this team. I forgot about it. And then you go have that conversation. You might realize, oh, I didn't realize you had, this dependency on that team. Let me go unblock you. Right.
Okay.
And then it's, those are the sorts of kind of, we can call it those precog red balls that should come up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
something's
Okay.
amiss, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so without this, I mean, this is one of the things that I'm really curious about with what's going to happen to people like me in this new world, because a lot of my ability is predicated upon me like being in a meeting and watching somebody like do a twitch with their eye and being like, oh crap, I know what that means, because I've seen these patterns and hyper kind of aware of micro expressions and body language and things like that. And with business agility, a company needs a greater awareness of what's happening systematically, a greater ability to sense and respond. And this is almost like giving them emotional intelligence information for the business.
Yeah. And I don't think that part of it will go away. You'll still be able to see people react in those meetings, right? To say,
But
hey,
I'll have a whole extra set of stuff that I have to worry about along with it.
yeah. And that's where that's where we need these tools to come into place to say, okay. I can't maybe identify that on my own. I can't see the agent's eye twitch, like the AI agent's eye twitch that's going along, but I could look at the patterns of what's happening with the AI process. And that's really where it's kind of growing towards, where, someone like yourself working with, you have, this is kind of where we're going to be, right? You're going to be at you're project managing a team, and you're also project managing an AI agent that's sitting alongside that team. And then you could actually look at the logs of that agent and see, okay, I noticed, like, this kind of fits into the RAG and CAG, like, hey, I noticed that agent is reaching out to this repository more frequently than it should. And it's, maybe it needs to reach out to that repository. Or I'm noticing that it's, we're taking up too many tokens with this approach. Maybe this is something that we need to take on, on the human side of things and not have the agent do it because we're spending too much money.
Yeah.
So there's going to be that element of both the human side. So it'll be basically deciding, when do humans need to intervene, and what do we basically pair off to an agent to do?
Cool.
And then when do we need to make sure that, hey, is this on track? Or kind of like the security thing, right? Like, is it reaching out to the agent? Is it reaching out to somewhere it shouldn't be? Because that's, maybe maybe it's a security risk, or maybe it's just not within, like, the space of what you want to be working on. So,
and it's a real example of augmented intelligence of somebody like me who has developed pattern matching skills, looks for certain things, is watching certain things, but now it's like I'm getting, I was broadcast TV, and now I've added cable to my package, and I can watch all the home repair shows I want. Okay. So,
and you'll still have that too. Like, we had a meeting with some executives not long ago, and we're pitching highlighting how they were doing in their past PI, right? And what I can do is I'm still looking for those visualizations too, right? Like, she started like this, she was like kind of sitting back, and she leaned in. I was like, okay, now I've got you. Like, I've got your attention now.
Reel it in.
Like, like, okay, before you were, so there is definitely going to be that element where then you're still pitching to the human who's signing the checks, right? To say, okay, are you engaged? And then also, like, the Scrum Masters and project managers, you can kind of see, hey, I'm giving you a tool now that when you go into your retros, you have data to talk about. So it's not just, finger pointing out. Those are hard conversations, to have with folks. Now you can look at it and say, hey, here's what the data is telling us. We can all come together and fix this, right? It's not me telling you, it's the data telling us. Now we all got to get together and figure out, how to make this work. So those elements are still going to be a real part of how software gets built.
It's an example of how it's not like either or, like I'm doing my job and it's going to be taken over. But if I put the two together, the result is so much stronger. It's like being able to just see with blinders on to being able to see the full field of view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the difference between RAG and CAG, because like I said, I had never heard of CAG before, but I was struggling with how a RAG was going to get what we just described. So you put up this blog post, but would you mind kind of walking through what the difference is?
Yeah. And so there's kind of two different approaches. The one that's happening right now is called RAG, and that's retrieval augmented generation. Okay. And really what that means is that it's you're can think about it, I don't use too many metaphors, but it's like you're taking a test. And so a RAG, you have an open book test. So I can go in and I can look at everything and say, okay, I need this piece of information. So I need to flip to page 52. Okay, that's what I need. All right, that's not quite what I need. Now I need to go to page 100. So it's searching through that open book and trying to figure out, give you that right answer.
And the open book being the whole internet.
Yep, whole internet.
Okay.
You could put some limits, some limits on it for sure, but let's just call it, the whole internet and just
including
say,
stuff that's wrong that other people have posted.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It's the, we call it the most, up-to-date information. So it does have some elements there where you'd want to use it, but it's just, hey, I'm looking at the whole internet and then I'm going to parse it out and give you what I think is the best answer based on a, whole suite of different information points.
But you could place guardrails in to say only go to these sites for information, right?
You could get to that point. Yes. You could say, hey, just don't, you could, blacklist certain sites, right? Within
Don't go to RedTube for information.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here's where so you can definitely,
I don't know if that would help anyone, but
right.
Yeah.
And just based on how it'll work too, like your vectors, which will tell you, okay, this word is similar to this word in terms of meaning. And so it'll go search. So generally RAG will still get, kind of get you there, but you can't really define where it's pulling information. You'd have to go and search and say, okay, where did that come from? Right. And kind of doing a works cited, right? So I'm going to cite my work because I need to make sure that I'm giving you the right information.
But
so
before you go to the other one, I just want to hit on one point here. That search, which is very broad and very wide and has no ability to tell whether or not something is actually true, has no context for your situation other than what you put in the prompt.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So it's very important in that case that your prompt is very specific.
Okay.
And so prompt writing is going to be another skill that all of us are going to have to do, kind of regardless within that. But that's a big thing to say, okay, and it doesn't have, the other thing is too, it doesn't have a cached history. That's where we'll get into CAG here in a second, is that it's just looking out and saying, here's a question I'm searching for the first time using all the relevant information available to me that lines up with, the meaning of this question. So I'm going to search the whole internet, what database I have, and try and identify that based on what it identifies as the meaning. So it's really good for, if you're looking at a really broad base of things, right? Or if you need the most up-to-date information, right now, right? Like if you're, trying to figure out, hey, maybe there was a new case, a new federal case that just got solved and it's going to impact my federal case and I wasn't aware of it. I could do a broad search and say, okay, search for any cases across the country that are similar to mine. And I need to know what happened within that case today versus waiting for it to come up on some sort of documentation later. So it does have that. The issue there is that if you're talking about costs, you can really incur a lot of costs with that RAG approach, which
because of the token spend, right?
Yeah. Yep. The token spend is going to, is always going to be a little bit higher, which isn't a huge concern for people yet. But, you look at, companies like OpenAI who are, trying to drive another like $15 billion in investment, right? Like that rooster is going to come home to roost eventually. And those costs are going to be put onto.
Well, yeah, because the price of the tokens will rise as it becomes so widespread that they've got us by the throat and they can do whatever they want to us now.
Yep. Or have 20 ads you got to click through to get to your information, whatever that might be. So that approach works right now because, it's the taste, right? We're all like, all right, let's get you, get you focused, got to use it. And then you can't do anything about it. So, and it'll always have kind of a place within AI and, augmented generation.
Okay.
So that's where we've kind of been and where we're seeing shifts a little bit, is into CAG, and that's looking at your cache augmented generation. So not exactly the same as context, but similar. So cache augmented generation is going to basically cache that information that you searched for in the past, or that anybody searched for in the past, and then it gives you that answer based on, basically, was that the right answer for somebody? So if I'm developing something, I'm a software developer, and everybody in my software team is asking the same question about, okay, how do we solve, this particular problem, or what repo do I need to go to to make this work? That cache is then going to give you a quick answer. So it's not searching the whole internet again. It's searching for, hey, this was the right answer that we had last time. Let's hit that answer, send it back. So you get a quick answer and you get the same answer. So I think everybody's probably gone through
consistency.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's important when it's a smaller, you want to, cache. So it'll be a smaller subset of information. So you want to make sure that that information is, obviously correct, but you're also going to get those same answers out. So for example, everybody's probably used this. If you ask ChatGPT the same question, 3 or 4 times, you're probably not going to get the same answer. Or we're going to get some variance of it. That's the RAG approach, right? Where it's like, okay, I see this, semantically
from scratch every time.
Yep, scratch every time. It identifies those vectors and the meanings. That says, okay, this looks like the right way. I'm going to send them over here, and that'll probably give them, something close.
Okay.
You can think about a CAG approach would be, here's that answer. Everyone keeps asking it. This answer seems to be the right answer. So I'm just going to make sure that anytime someone asks me this question, it hits that cache, comes back, and you get that particular answer. So
okay.
That's the big difference is.
So a company would have to set that up though. I mean, if it's well, you'd have to set up either, right?
Yep. Yeah. And what we're starting to see is actually kind of a hybrid approach.
Okay.
So you'd come in, you'd have, this is what's going to be really valuable for any company, especially big companies, is going to be their key value cache or their persistent AI memory. So as these AI tools continue to learn on your particular data set, that's going to become this new kind of security layer where you don't want anyone to access the prompts that you've been asking, the data sets and giving responses. That's going to become like a new security risk, but also a huge value driver, right? To say, hey, we've really figured out the right prompts for our particular company, our particular data set. And then our AI memory has cached those so that we know that everybody in the company is getting the same answer.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Which could have, really profound effects at big companies because the semantics are going to kill big companies. You could be talking about the same thing and you're just using different words and everyone's like, okay, there's just causes confusion, right? So
but that could be good from I think from a customer service or like an intranet point as well, right?
100%. Yeah, and that's where you'll see kind of CAG come more into it is like a customer service agent. So it comes in and I know I can program and say, this is the data information you need to ask. Don't hallucinate an answer. And it can't really
hallucinate. Like if you tell it not to hallucinate, is it actually going to not hallucinate? I thought it did that without realizing it.
It does it without realizing it. The good thing about CAG is that it's hitting that cache, right? So it's saying, okay, it's a smaller,
limiting the pool. Yeah.
You got it. Yeah. You decrease the chances of a hallucination, right? And there's different percentages on it that you can look at, but because that data set's smaller, that, okay, the chances of me hallucinating are a lot less. And for us, as a software company, right, that's huge because I don't want you to hallucinate the numbers from your sprints, right? Or the numbers from your epics and your destroy points and your cycle times. Like we have to be really, really careful to not say, okay, don't just go on a RAG and look at every single project. Like I asked you for this particular project, this particular sprint, you need to make sure that cached information is only that project, only that sprint. And that's where we can really, really drive value is being in that contextual layer. It is different than cache, but it's still kind of that same idea where you're feeding in the context and you're directing it to only a small subset of information.
Okay. Now, is there going to be like a keeper of this? Because I'm assuming at some point you'd want to flush it, right?
Yep. Yeah. So you're definitely going to have, maybe it could be your data scientists, whatever that role is. It may be customer success managers, right? That's kind of been a new term or a new role that, we've been seeing pop up where it might be like, let's make sure that our customer base has only this particular sort of data and that is up to date. Or that, hey, we need to, so that's one of the disadvantages you can have with CAG is that if you are using it, say for like a legal app, right? Or,
or you're a politician that wants everyone to think the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's always the other kind of sneaky layer of it, right? That you could just say, hey, this is what I want you to hear and just kind of, repeat it. So there's always a little danger in that. And that's when, I think we talked a little bit about like this, taking those 8 IBM skills courses or any skills courses and talking about AI ethics, right? That's where this comes in to be like, hey, when you're thinking about this, make sure that and you can speak to what is this data set that we're referencing? Because that's going to become more and more, especially in Europe. We'll see with the US, right? But I know in Europe for sure, they're getting really, really specific on some of their AI laws where later this year, you're going to have to show what you're going to have to audit your AI agent. Say, where did that AI agent get its information? What was that information source? Was it biased? Right? All those sorts of things.
Well, yes. I mean, everything's biased. Can't avoid
right.
that one.
Everything's biased. So can you tell, you need to look at that database and see, okay, was that database initially biased? Maybe not. Maybe you weren't being malicious about it, but maybe it's just, hey, we brought in this data set and it was just inherently biased.
It hadn't been cleaned properly or something like that.
Yeah. It just, maybe it just happened. And then you can say, you know what, we have identified a bias because, we didn't realize that looking at our data set. You probably see that with like university admissions, I bet will be another big one for this. So, what you're going to see is a combination of CAG and RAG going forward. And so the folks that I think are going to really be able to take advantage of AI are, one, like you were saying, going to be very focused on data management, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are we feeding that tool? Because most AI tools now have scanned the internet, right? And available internet data, all the big LLMs have already done it. Like they did RAG. That was the big thing we could type in, a couple of years ago, right? Like, oh, wow, that's cool. I never knew that, right? It's at my fingertips now. Now I think it's about, all right, we can take that approach, but now we need to slim it down to those specifics.
Something useful, yeah.
Yeah. What are you really trying to get at? And is it, can I decrease the percentage of potential hallucination, right? And that's where you come in and say, okay, I use my persistent AI memory. Then I can use those key value terms. So that kind of creates your vectors, right? Of, okay, these two things are similar. So now I'm going to, go into the neural network and go out and give an answer. And then it can hit a semantic cache or the CAG layer. And then that CAG layer can look and say, okay, does this fit with what I know contextually or what I've cached, what information I've saved, in my working memory. And then you can make the decision of, okay, maybe it doesn't have the right answer. Then you can go into a RAG state and then say, okay, now I want you to go in and look at all the other available docs and data. And then that creates what you call as like your enterprise data layer, right? Where it's just now I have that combination, and then kind of where we'll come in and as a process intelligence tool is to say, when did that AI agent decide to switch from CAG to RAG? And that's going to be super important because I'm going to want to know, if you're in a high stakes industry, finances, legal, insurance, or really anybody, right? I want to know, when did that AI agent decide to shift? This is where the human side comes in to the agent and says, okay, it now went out and looked at these other documents. Is that the approach? Like maybe I need.
But it's not going to do that without somebody telling it to do that, right?
You could create a layer and tell it, but it also could just be an automation, right? To just say, hey, you're going to run. So basically the whole flow will be
test. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Test it. And then I could look back and say, okay, I know that, maybe I get a ping and it says, okay, I finished my, AI agent A has gone over here and it's run its CAG. Agent B has run its CAG, but it's also going to do its RAG afterwards. So you have like two different kind of automations going. And then I can look at those two, and that's where the human side can come in and say, okay, I'm going to compare this CAG answer. It didn't hallucinate, but it didn't give me a good enough answer. Didn't answer my question. Let me compare that to CAG with the RAG, and then say, okay, is that information the same? And that's when the human element can kind of come in and compare the two.
For now, because in the future, it could be another agent that's comparing the two, right?
Yep. Yeah. And that's where you have to make, that's when the kind of the enterprise discussions can come in and say, okay, where do we want the human intervention? Some companies are going to probably say, hey, you just want it to run, right? Just let it go, and we'll just, we're fully trusting in our model, and that's fine. Other companies are going to want to say, you know what, because of, compliance issues, right? Like maybe it's making a decision about, what healthcare you're going to get, right? We already know United Health and other companies have already gotten in trouble for that.
Right.
Maybe if I'm, I'm being a moral insurance company, which I don't know if that exists or not, but if it does, I'd want to come in and say, hey, I made this decision is best for my client, right?
Yeah.
Being the person's health, or this decision makes me the most money, right?
Okay.
Hopefully it's best for health, right? So you could actually design those systems in a way and say, hey, this is, this is the best decision for this particular individual, or this is the best, decision for the company, right? Kind of you're talking about before with politicians, right? This is where we got to, that's where AI ethics is going to become really important, because you could misuse that and just say, I want everybody to get this cached information.
Right.
And I don't want it to go outside of this cached information. So that's the mindset
Okay.
So that's where, folks like yourself are going to be able to look at it and say, is this the right decision
Yeah.
for this company?
Okay.
Or is this now, has it gone down a track which, is maybe no longer ethical for what this AI decision is making, because it's a computer, right? It's going to tell you, hey,
Doesn't
this is
know
it's not thinking about the human side of it. So
the
that's,
moral
uh,
complications of things. Yeah.
the AI tools.
Not yet.
Yeah. Right. Well, now, once we start giving robots rights and morals, we can have a different discussion, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
But right now,
So
there's
go ahead, finish.
no, that's okay.
Okay. So we only got a few minutes left. I want to make sure we talk about how you learned all this stuff, because that's something I know both you and I are pursuing in different directions. But I think for a lot of people, getting schooled up on AI is very challenging because you're not sure
It's,
what to pay attention to. Like, should I study prompts? Should I learn about all the different options in terms of the LLMs and which ones I use for what? The two things I'm pursuing are more about across the enterprise, like what has to happen with the data? How does all that work? How do we transform the entire organization? Like I'm more, I feel like, just working at it from a different angle. But and I'll talk about the programs I went through once I finish going through them. But how did you find out about all this stuff?
part of it's just the nature of working in our customer success world is, building out these AI tools, working with customers to say, how do we help you get, do better at your processes, leveraging AI?
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. So that part's a little bit specific of just kind of, of being in the industry and just having to, you know, to talk, informatively about it, so that I'm not just like, here's this wavy new thing, like come use it. Like here's
It's
an AI
shiny,
tool.
it's new. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like that's
But
for
you do
the,
have to, when people have to educate themselves, they have to go learn that. And there's so many places to learn from. So you went to a pretty
So-
well respected place.
Yep. Yeah. What I've been doing is trying to use a lot of the free tools too. Just so the IBM skills course, and then to be honest, the where I got a lot of value out of this too is just going into the IBM Technologies YouTube channels. They have these Think series, and so I'll just be, we all have jobs, we're all busy, so I'll do it on the train. Throw in my AirPods instead of maybe listening to my podcast, which I'm going to listen to a lot of those anyway. I maybe say, you know what, I'm going to spend 20 minutes and I'm going to learn what is this RAG thing, right? Like this is only about like maybe 2.5, 3 months ago where I started kind of putting some of this into play. Where it's just like, you know what, I'm going to choose to watch this video series, and then picking some of those free courses, and then just starting from the beginning and just
From
kind
there.
of working their way through has been useful. So it's probably a combination of those YouTube videos, and I think the biggest thing is to maybe it's just me, like I don't get it the first time I watch it. So one of the mistakes that I kind of made initially with AI is like I heard a term and I said, okay, well I know that term now, and I came back and someone asked me about it later, and I'm like, oh, maybe I don't know. Like, there's so many different terms out there. So it does take like, I'll watch a video and then I'll maybe give it a couple of days and I'll come back and be like, you know what, I need to watch it again.
Okay.
And the other big thing is doing exactly like what we're doing today is talking it through with other people and just getting prepared for this. Really helps me learn a lot more. And writing, writing small blogs, right? To say, let me take this weird complex thing that I can, throw out all these terms of, some of our developers, which doesn't even make sense to them because everything's changing so fast, right? Like, I don't know what CAG is or RAG is, like, MCP servers, right? Like, what does that do? Like, just being able to know the term doesn't help you as much as like being able to speak to it. So I would say, writing it out, putting that information into a blog, and then just posting it, and then having people kind of engage with it, or doing.
I like how you engage. Like it's a lot of really positive feedback while they're kicking you in the teeth.
Right. Like try and find something that maybe, take a side with like an argument sometimes I think is good too. And then, maybe you don't always agree with it. Right. But just taking a side,
being able to debate it helps you see things from another perspective.
Yep. And that's kind of what I do with this RAG and CAG idea. I was like, you know what, like I'm just going to try to take a side of one of these and see if I can make a point about it. And then let's see if other people push back. Those are the best ways to do it. But it is, I would say, using some of those, those bigger sources of information,
Yeah.
maybe your Metas, your Googles, your
Okay.
IBMs, right? They're spending a ton of money to get these courses down, and they're free. I've done the
Cool.
Coursera things too for like trying to learn how to do Python, and those are great too. But there's a lot of kind of free material out there that you can just
Yeah.
use. But it is, I think the biggest thing is definitely writing about it, creating something. So,
Well, if you can't explain it in writing or vocally, then you really probably don't even though you think you understand it, you probably don't.
right.
Cool.
Yeah. Just
So
that's the biggest thing.
if people want to reach out to you to follow up on this conversation, to learn more about BloomFilter, to learn more about how you're going about doing the work you're doing, how do you want them to reach out to you?
Yeah. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to be pretty active about posting. I'll post a couple of the different skills courses that I use and some of the YouTube videos for folks to use.
Oh, cool. That'd be
then,
great.
so if you'd like to see that, just go to my page. I'll have it. I'll just leave it up there as well. It's one of my top posts.
Awesome.
And yeah, just starting to get engaged. And like I said, it's I think it's hard too as we get older to to learn new things, but it's going to be really important. So it does take. Yeah, I think that was the hardest part about going through this process again. Is that, you know what? Hey, maybe in college I read it once and it was in my brain and I could go. I'm like, all right,
You're
got
old
this.
now.
Yeah, I don't
A
need
lot
it.
of beers in there.
Yeah, a few beers, maybe not not enough waters or espressos or vitamins, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just kind of saying, you know what, and take like one small piece of it and try and figure that out. Don't try and kind of boil the ocean. And those skills casts do help you.
Cool.
And then taking those, like, start at zero. So you might know, like, that was kind of another hard thing at first. I was like, you know what, I know a lot about AI, but you go into those, just take the basic skill course.
Go through the basic stuff, because you missed there's things you don't know that you don't even realize you don't know.
Yeah. And so it'll be a bit painful at first. You're like, I've heard of this word. I know this word. And you'll get through those first like 4 hours, but then you're like, okay, you've kind of built that foundation. And then, then just posting about it and putting it in a format that other people can understand.
Cool.
Helps you learn better. And then once you learn better, then you can say, okay, now when I go and try and apply this, or if you're, if you're in, if you're talking to some executive, right? We find this a lot too, where it prepares you maybe even for like another job role where you're not just talking about some, big blue sky. Okay. Hey, you need to adopt more AI. You need to adopt more AI. If you can get down to like really, really specifics about what particular lane you want to focus on in AI, like, hey, CAG or RAG or CAG, or how are you, like, think about some problem that you're trying to solve, back to, writing the book, right? It's like, what is that problem you're trying to solve? Maybe it's, hey, I want to make sure that AI's tools are ethical.
And making it easier to solve the problem. Okay.
Yeah.
You said now you got to plug your book.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Flip, been out there. It's on Amazon if anyone wants to read it. It's about choosing the right problems to solve. And that's definitely something, it helps me because I'm in this space. So I have problems that customers give me. And then I can use that and describe, hey, you should use our Floor AI tool because it uses, contextual layers and uses CAG, type augmented generation to be able to answer your question. And so it allows me to answer customer problems by understanding more about, how these tools are working and how they're built. So pick a problem that, maybe you're interested in. Maybe it could be like, hey, how do I use AI to be better at betting on sports, right? It can be anything, right? Just pick something that would be interesting or fun, and then drive into, okay, now I'm using this course to figure it out. Like, all right, now I want to figure out, hey, I'm in a college basketball tournament. What types of tools should I use to make sure that I can have the best AI tool to give me feedback?
Card.
Right? Yeah, the best bracket, whatever that bit might be. But pick a problem or something that's interesting, and then drive into those, and then make sure you're on to those skills in those courses, and then it'll actually feel relevant versus just like, if I threw something out, like if I just RAG and CAG to people without solving some problem, they're going to be like, okay, well, what am I going to do with it? So if you don't have a statement that you're going towards, it's going to be really hard to be as motivated to learn, because we're not in college anymore, right? Like I'm not getting tested on this, but but it prepares you for
what's next.
What's next? Yeah, right. So you can stay ahead of it. So no, folks, if the folks are more interested, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and feel free to disagree with me on posts. That's always fun. It helps the learning. So I'll try and keep those going, and I'll put a couple links out for folks to check out kind of what.
Cool. And I'll put the links in the show notes as well. But thank you very much for doing this, man. I appreciate it. It's great catching up.
Appreciate it, Dave. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.